Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the CCMA Youth Day Seminar. A warm welcome to our panel members, the youth of South Africa as a whole, and through everybody who is joining us through the various social media platforms. The CCMA is a dispute resolution body established in terms of the Labour Relations Act. Our role, amongst others, is to assist in the effective management of disputes, resolving of disputes, and promoting fair labor practices in the workplace, whilst responding to the labor market needs and positively impacting on the labor market to ensure social economic growth and development in our country. We strongly believe that the youth of South Africa can play a very pivotal role in this instance. It is for this reason that we today have requested the list of industry professionals and CCMA members to come through the CCMA Youth Day Seminar. We hope that today's session will be very beneficial to the youth of South Africa, and we encourage active participation of same. Without further ado, let me introduce the first speaker in today's program, Mr. Mpumelelo Ngcono, who is the Provincial Senior Commissioner of the Gauteng region for the CCMA. He is going to be taking us through how the CCMA can assist in addressing the labor market challenges affecting the youth, including workplace bullying, rights of interns and candidates involved in CETA programs. He's also going to be taking us through the effects of retrenchments involving young recruits. Mr. Mpumelelo Ngcono, if you may join us.
Morning, everyone. Nice warm introduction for me there. And as far as the call, I'm here to assist you with assisting with how the CCMA can assist you with workplace bullying. So workplace bullying can take place over various forms. You can have a situation whereby it's physical, it's verbal, it's cyberbullying. But I think in our discussions, and as brief as they're going to be, we need to also consider that there's a fine line between workplace bullying and strong management in that concern. So having regard to that, I'm just going to quickly jump through and talk to how the CCMA can assist in as far as workplace bullying is concerned. So when it comes to workplace bullying, we can assist through advocacy as the CCMA. We have dispute management and prevention programs which are called Transforming Workplace Relations. What these do is we assist certain workplaces where there is tension, where there is unfair discrimination, or where the workplace relations are a bit iffy, if I can use the word. So what we do is we'll send the commissioner to come in there to come and ascertain from the parties and as far as what the actual issues are. But in sticking to the topic and the subject matter today, the advice that I can give for people who are experiencing workplace bullying would be, if you are a victim or you find yourself being a victim of workplace bullying, the first thing I would do or advise is for you to obviously take notes, build a paper trail in as far as that is concerned, with dates whereby this took place, in front of whom, for purposes of collecting witnesses. And then once you have that information, you can then report same to your line manager or your supervisor, who then must take the necessary measures in line with whatever workplace policy or procedure that's in place. For employers who are not sure or unfamiliar with how to deal with workplace bullying, I would advise that, look, you can approach the CCMA for purposes of assistance in as far as what would have to be contained in such a policy. That policy would have to be coupled with the procedure that would have to be followed in an instance where someone comes to you and reports that I'm suffering from workplace bullying, they would need to know what procedure they need to follow, who they need to inform, and what the procedure is thereafter. And coupled with that workplace policy, I would also encourage employers to have EAP programs in place for people who have fallen victim, because workplace bullying does amongst a number of things to people who have been victims in that, and like if we don't if we don't take care of it, it reduces productivity, increases absenteeism, and those sort of things. So, from a legislative perspective, if you go to LRA, if you go to a Basic Conditions of Employment Act, unfortunately, you will not find bullying or workplace bullying defined. You won't even find it in the EEA, albeit you can, if you go to section 6 subsection 2, whereby it talks to harassment and harassment in the workplace, and that harassment coupled with any of the prohibited grounds in the EEA could amount to workplace bullying. So when we talk about that, what we're saying is that if you are bullied in the workplace, please familiarize yourself with the Employment Equity Act, as you will not find workplace bullying in the LRA or in the BCEA. Can have a quick whiz and look at section 6, subsection 2, and as far as what you have to do, and as far as if you find yourself as being a victim of workplace bullying. And there's two distinctions. If you are terminated or you are dismissed as a consequence of being bullied and then ultimately dismissed, and you are alleging that you were harassed and it's part of the harassment, what you can then do is to open up an automatic unfair dismissal. If you are still in the workplace and you are a victim of workplace bullying, your option would be then to refer an unfair discrimination dispute. Now, these two acts can be entertained mutually or simultaneously. It's up to you. But what happens is, if you refer a case where you say I was dismissed and the basis of my dismissal is because I was harassed, it then no longer amounts to a normal dismissal. It then changes from a normal dismissal to an automatic unfair dismissal. Now, what that means in as far as remedies that are available to you as an applicant is that in a normal dismissal, a commissioner considering the fairness or the unfairness of your dismissal is restricted to 12 months. If in an instance where the dismissal becomes an automatic unfair dismissal, then that then increases to 24 months. And over and above it increasing to 24 months, what happens is that such disputes where there's an automatic unfair dismissal, unlike your normal dismissal, which if conciliated unsuccessfully can be referred to arbitration, in an instance where you have an automatic unfair dismissal, that dismissal then rests with the Labour Court adjudication should you find a situation whereby it's unresolved at conciliation. Parties are entitled to agree to have the matter arbitrated at the CCMA, but in as far as the remedies are concerned, the remedies of 24 months compensation vis-a-vis 12 months compensation is still applicable. Okay, that's the first part I'm required to do with this, which is the bullying. Okay, now and as far as the second part, which talks to interns and candidates involved in CETA programs, I'd like to, when discussing this one, for us to sort of draw a distinction between learnerships, apprenticeships, internships, and sort of graduate programs. So the first one I'm going to discuss is learnership. Now, I'm gonna backtrack and be very slow in discussing this one. Learnerships differ from internships. The reason I'm saying that learnerships differ from internships is a learnership program differs from an internship because for you to be found or for you to be in a learnership agreement, there's three parties involved. The first party is you as the learner. The second party is the employer where you'll be designated, and the third party is a CETA, an accredited CETA so for a learnership agreement or a learnership contract to meet the requirements in terms of the Skills Development Act, these three parties need to be in place. The said learnership needs to be signed in as far as a prescribed form, as contained in the SDA. Now, what happens is when you enter into a learnership agreement, it's it's usually those are the three parties. You enter into the learnership, so you get on the job theoretical and practical learning during the period which you are in this learnership agreement. Your employer, or at the time, I'm going to use the word loosely, employer, must then allow you to go to a CETA to go get additional training in as far as what you're getting on the job. Okay. Now, it's not a normal employer-employee relationship because it's governed by the the Skills Development Act. I apologize. So, with it being governed by the Skills Development Act, it also then goes further and deals with remuneration. Now, we all know that a law was passed. The law indicated that if you are employed, the national minimum wage is 20 Rand an hour. There are exceptions to this 20 Rand an hour, those exceptions being a learner who is on a learnership agreement. And when I say learner, I include someone who's on apprenticeship. What happens there is a person is paid a stipend if you enter into a proper learnership agreement in line with the Skills Development Act. Now, this stipend you'll find in Schedule 2 of the National Minimum Wage. And there's levels. The levels range from levels 1 to 8. With those levels ranging from levels 1 to 8, you have credits attached to those levels. So the minimum you can be paid on a learnership is 301 Rand per week for the level 1 on the credits, and it goes as far as 699 per week. So if you do the math and you do the 4.33, what then that means is that if you are a learner and you're on a proper learnership agreement, per month you would receive an amount of plus minus 1,304 Rand and 23 cents, or 2,608 Rand per month. This is now at your level 1 rate. Then you move a bit higher, which is your level 5s to level 8, and again it goes with the credits that is attached to the level, and the maximum that is contained in Schedule 2 of the National Minimum Wage is you can get 1,755 Rand and 84 cents per week, which then is an equivalent of 7,606 Rand 0.49 per month. Unfortunately, I only have 15 minutes to discuss this, but if you're in a learnership, my advice to you, if you're unsure about your remuneration, is go to the National Minimum Wage, go to Schedule 2. You can then ascertain from there which level you are on, and then check the credits which is attached to that level to then determine whether or not on that learnership they're remunerating you in accordance with what is contained in Schedule 2 of the National Minimum Wage. Okay, and then the other important thing about being on a learnership program is that once you've completed the program, you then obtain a certificate which is registered with the National Qualification Framework, and it's nationally recognized. And what that certificate does, it will assist you with further employment or further studies on the specific field, because you'll have credits attached to that. Okay, so in as far as the learnership agreement, the term is always determined prior to you entering into the learnership agreement. It cannot be terminated prior to that. The only time it can be terminated is if you are successful prior to the expiry of that learnership. You are found to be successful. Alternatively, if you as a learner commit a misconduct or you are incapacitated during the learnership program, then it can also then come to an end. But having said that, obviously due processes and due reasons need to be in place prior to that termination. And the other place is the question now. you want me to answer it now or continue afterwards? Okay, no problem. And the other termination would be in an instance where a CETA, the actual CETA, because it's a learnership is between three parties. If the CETA then agrees that, look, such a termination should take place. So those are the only reasons allowed in as far as the termination of a learnership is concerned. And disputes. So if you are a learner, you're having an issue in as far as how do I interpret and apply the provisions of my learnership agreement, what happens, or if you feel you've been unfairly terminated or dismissed whilst on a learnership, the Skills Development Act gives you the right to then approach us at the CCMA to refer disputes about the interpretation of the learnership agreement, of provisions of whatever is contained in there. So you refer to us at the CCMA for conciliation. Obviously, you have to follow due process in that you have to notify the employer and the CETA in as far as your dispute that you've referred to us. It's set down for conciliation within 30 days. We will try and resolve the dispute amicably between the parties. In the event that we are unable to do so, the next step then would be for you to refer the dispute for arbitration, which must take place within 90 days of that referral. So if you're going to unpack that, learnership falls within a specific ambit. That ambit is regulated by the Skills Development Act. Then we look at apprenticeship, which also falls within that ambit of the Skills Development Act. And as far as the learnership is concerned, same process there. If you're on apprenticeship, the only basis you can be terminated is if you successfully completed the term, or you've been dismissed for conduct or incapacity, or the CETA has indicated that you should be terminated. Okay. And then we go to internship. You've got your undergrad internship, which usually takes place when you're still an undergrad, you're still completing the degree. I think used loosely, it's vocational work. You come in, you work on holidays, and obviously when you do that, you work with the intention of perhaps working for that company should you complete the degree at a later stage. It can be paid, it can be unpaid. And then you have your graduate internship, where you finished your degree, and then you undergo this graduate internship. I think the key factors there is that you shouldn't be filling a core function or position that should be filled permanently, in as far as you being on an internship. A typical example of such a situation would be candidate attorney. You go for articles. Yes, you are there, but your powers are sort of limited. Then, when it comes to internships, I've expressed the procedure to be followed when it comes to learnership. When it comes to internships, there's a thin line, because when I say there's a thin line, you just have to refer to Section 213 of the Labor Relations Act, which defines an employee. It defines an employee as any person who assists in the carrying or the conducting of a business, and then in turn is entitled to receive remuneration. So that's the definition of an employee loosely in terms of the LRA. So you assist in the conducting of a business, and then you are entitled to remuneration. The only exclusion in as far as that is concerned is if you're an independent contractor or service provider, but everything else can fit within that core. Now, if you're an intern, for example, and you're earning below the threshold, then, and you're not sure about your stance, take the definition that I've just given to you now. You go to Section 200A, obviously applicable if you're earning below the threshold. Section 200A creates then a rebuttable presumption. When I say rebuttable presumption, it's that it has a list of 7 factors that are taken into consideration. If any of those factors are contained in as far as whatever relationship that it is between you and your employer, whether internship or otherwise. If those exist, then there's a presumption that you are an employee. So and then it is for the employer at that particular time to come then and say, I rebut these presumptions on the basis of A, B, C, D. Are you with me? So if any of these 7 factors are in there, it's the onus shifts from you as an intern or an employee. If you're saying you are an employee, to the employer, for the employer to come and rebut those presumptions. So I'm just going to give some of those factors. If the manner in which you work is controlled by another person, then it's one of those factors considered. If you work 40 hours per month over the last 3 months, you fall within a rebuttable presumption that you are an employee. If economically you're dependent on a person, if you provided tools of the trade, like with a laptop, a phone, if you provide the service only to that particular person, there's this rebuttable presumption that you are an employee. Section 200A of the LRA is applicable to government, business, NGOs, and even your churches. The only exclusion, I'm going to reiterate again, would be independent contractors. It will be the South African Secret Services, the Defence Force, and the National Intelligence Agency. So I don't think those particular entities will be providing internship due by the nature of what they're doing, but the LRA is not applicable to them. And then the other exception would be the exception I'd indicated earlier on, where I'd indicated that if your relationship is formed via the Skills Development Act, your rights must be exercised in terms of that Skills Development Act, and as far as the procedure I'd indicated a bit earlier on. So in a nutshell, if you look at the internship, learnership, apprenticeship, the devil is in the detail. It's very important that you are provided with a copy of whatever learnership agreement you enter into, internship, so that you don't find yourself in a situation where when you are unhappy or you want to prove something, you're not in a position to do so. When it comes to internship, it's the case law is limited in this respect. I have picked up on a case. It's not a binding case because it's a CCMA, or it's an arbitration award. The parties in that dispute was Andrenius versus the Department of Health. To cut it short, what happened is Miss Andrenius was on a 4-year internship at a hospital. Out of the blue, she was then informed that, well, look, your internship has come to an end. Goodbye, you are terminated. She then referred a dispute to the relevant authority, and the arbitrator found that she was an employee in terms of Section 213 of the LRA. The arbitrator relied on Section 200A, where the arbitrator indicated that, with the exception of one of the 7 factors contained in Section 200A, she was able to create proof, or she was able to prove that she was an employee, and the hospital was made to reinstate Miss Andrenius on full back pay. The only puzzling issue, in as far as what the arbitrator had indicated there, was to say that Section 200A does not provide a discretion, which in my view is incorrect, because it creates a rebuttable presumption which the other party can rebut. But when you say you have no discretion, it's not entirely correct. But in as far as the other principles contained in the case, I fully agree with them. And then I won't go into the church case. It's a labor appeal court case, because it just deals with the devil in the detail. I'm looking at the time. You've got then your CETAs, which we've explained, and then when it comes to in internship, look, for me, I would want to advocate that, look, as youth, there's a number of things that are available in as far as internships are concerned. You've got the National Youth Development Agency, you've got the Arambe Youth Employment Accelerator, and you've got the Youth Employment Service Initiative. I think taking that home, we as a CCMA, we also have some interns. I've got a few success stories whereby people who were interns find themselves in various roles. So my advice to you would be, if you are provided with an internship, take it with both hands, prove yourself valuable to the institution, and who knows, you may be employed permanently. But should you have issues, you're more than welcome to come to the CCMA for purposes of assistance. So I've discussed the first topic. Do you want me to answer this before I go to the last one, or at the end? In your hands. Answer it now. Let's have a look. So the question is from Naidu Milani Trevor. Can an employer charge you for negligence but dismiss you on something you were never charged for? Look, and as far as the question is concerned, it's a valid question. And when I say it's a valid question, is labor law differs from criminal law in that there's a recent constitutional court case where it was indicated that when you look at labor, we must not over criminalize the charges. I think if you look at the negligence one, it's a bit difficult when I say so. When you charged, the issue is not so much about the charge. The issue is about whether or not you committed a misconduct, and in you having committed the misconduct, that there's evidence that was led to show that you committed a misconduct. And when you look at the misconduct that has been committed, if found guilty, does having committed that misconduct then render your dismissal a dismissible sanction in as far as the misconduct you've committed? That's the key in as far as the charges are concerned. So I think with commissioners, with employers and employees, the gist of it is we must not get caught up in what is contained in the charge. We must get caught up in as far as what the employer has been able to bring to the party to prove that has occurred, and whether or not you are then able to then defend that successfully. If you are unable to defend it successfully, then the question would be, does the fact that you've committed this particular misconduct render your dismissal a suitable sanction for purposes of having committed that misconduct? I think I've answered that one. Then the last issue I need to discuss is got to do with retrenchments. I think to discuss this one, we need to look at what retrenchment is. Retrenchment is a no-fault dismissal on the part of the employee. It's essentially in an instance where the employer has reviewed its business needs and operational requirements, and in doing so, it's then contemplating, having looked at that, whether or not it has to reduce the number of employees. Now, when you talk about dismissal or retrenchments or dismissal for operational requirements, there's a rationale or the reason for going this route. That would be for economic purposes, whereby the employer indicates that, look, I'm losing profits, or I'm moving towards closing a full plant closure. There would be an instance where the employer is saying, look, especially now, we are mechanizing or we are introducing technology, and with the introduction of this technology, we're not going to need so many warm bodies in place, or it's a situation whereby the employer is restructuring. There's two forms of dismissal for operational requirements. I call them small scale and large scale. Small scale will be your Section 189 in an instance where the employer perhaps employs less than 50 people. And then you have your large scale where the employer employs more than 50 and at the time is terminating in excess of 10. So those are the two dismissal for operational requirements. Now the Act is clear for both of them. It says that when the employer is contemplating to dismiss for operational requirement, it needs to invite those that are likely to be affected to the process. Okay. Now it needs to draft, and it needs to do this in writing. So in the section 189A subsection 3 notice, it needs to indicate, of the reasons I've indicated, what is the rationale for the retrenchment, who is likely to be retrenched or dismissed. It invites then those that are likely to be retrenched or dismissed to offer alternatives in as far as the retrenchment is concerned, selection criteria, the timing of the retrenchment, and also severance pay. Okay, so then it must invite those affected to come. So if you look at section 189, it indicates that if there's a workplace forum, the employer must then consult with the workplace forum. If there's no workplace forum, then they must consult with the trade union. No trade union, they must consult with the affected employees. Now, the other key when it comes to retrenchment is there needs to be joint consensus seeking alternatives. So on the rationale, if the employer is saying, look, the basis for me retrenching is because of economic reasons, then when they come and consult, I think if I'm the one who's being retrenched, I would want them to provide maybe audited financial statements to show this loss that they're relying upon for purposes of me losing my job. If it's technological reasons, they must give so that I can give input in as far as how I believe this technology, or if I can work with the technology, or structural and so on. Then you must, then of also critical importance in the consultation process is that the selection criteria as a first prize needs to be agreed upon. So this now will deal with the first in, first out principle. So the first in, first out principle is that the first person in is the first person out. Now, when you talk about selection criteria, as indicated, needs to be agreed upon. So as a general principle, you have the last in, first out principle. When I say the last in, first out principle as a selection criteria, it's those who've been there for many years. If there's going to be retrenchment, they should be kept, and those that came in last should be retrenched. It is a selection. It's usually a fair and objective selection criteria, but it's not the only criteria. So what that means then is, if, for example, it's not for economic reasons, it's for technological reasons, and let's say you as a young person possess the necessary skills in as far as what is required for the employer to move forward, then as part of the selection criteria, maybe LIFO may not be applicable. Maybe skills are applicable. And in that particular instance, it's neither LIFO or FIFO, it's skills. So when it comes to retrenchment, there is no set selection criteria. Selection criteria is determined during each particular case. So when people come and say that LIFO is and the only principle or selection criteria that is available, it's incorrect. It depends on the circumstances, and because it depends on the circumstances, it's usually best if the employer is able to agree on the selection criteria with the consultation or with the parties that they are consulting with. Failure which then obviously they can then select the selection criteria. The only important thing in as far as that is concerned is it must be fair and it must be objective. Once that whole joint consensus seeking consultation takes place, then you must be provided with a notice of your termination if there's been no alternatives available. That notice of termination obviously will have to indicate when you'll be terminated, additional assistance available, reasons for the retrenchment, UIF must be in place, severance pay must have been paid, and if you're not happy in as far as what has taken place, I'm going to go back again to the small scale and the large scale retrenchment is concerned. If the employer employs less than 10, employees and retrenches one or all of them, you then entitled to refer the case to the CCMA or the Bargaining Council for conciliation. If it's unresolved, you can then refer it to arbitration. However, if the employer employs more than 10, and even if they've just terminated one person, you can then, if you can still refer the matter to the CCMA for conciliation. If the matter still remains unresolved, the next step would be for you to then go to the labor court. Different story in as far as the Section 189A process, because that process goes via facilitation process. It cannot be finalized in days less than 60 days, whereby a facilitator is appointed to come and assist the parties in facilitating an agreement. And then at the end of that, should parties still not be happy, parties have the remedies, and as far as the employee is concerned, they can then, if they unionize, elect to go on a strike in terms of Section 64 of the LRA. If they don't want to go that route, they can then refer again that case to CCMA for conciliation. If that fails, labor court time. Okay. No, I think I've covered all the aspects. I don't know if there's any more questions for me. No questions. Okay. So then I'm going to introduce the next speaker, who's going to discuss youth careers, available resources, and the effect of COVID-19. I hope I'm not going to butcher the name. It's Ms. Kani Mhlongo, Managing Partner of Think Career. Thank you for having me.
Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. It is so cold in Johannesburg and Pretoria, I suppose across South Africa. For me, I really enjoyed the presentation so far. That was the legislation that was shared with us. I think it's just a reminder of where we find ourselves, not only in South Africa, but globally. If we just think about the amount of retrenchments which have already been announced, we do understand that youth, or rather careers across the different industries, will be impacted by the number of retrenchments which will take place as a result of the recession which we have been going through, as well as added to that, the COVID-19 that is, the pandemic that is currently impacting a lot of us. So what I'd like to really share with you today, but before I go into the detail, is really around what are some of the opportunities, what are some of the things that we can start to rethink when it comes to careers, but also what are some of the things that we can start to do while we find ourselves, some of us, in lockdown. We do understand and also acknowledge the fact that a lot of the young people have been sitting at home with no access to technology, the internet, or tablets, computers, to be able to learn online or remotely. I think from my side, I just want to acknowledge the fact that that must have put a lot of pressure and frustration on a lot of the young people across South Africa. Added to that, the cost of Wi-Fi connectivity or data, if we want to call it, that also has presented a lot of challenges. But more than that, we've also experienced, or rather have seen, a lot of families going through challenges around, food supplies, shelter, and so forth. And we've seen the government come, as well as other organizations, come to the party to assist where they can. But also I want to acknowledge the other part around the depression and the anxiety a lot of the young people are currently going through. So prior to COVID, we know that the unemployment rate within our country has been really high. Job opportunities have not been forthcoming. And today I'd like to just share a couple of career opportunities which we need to start to rethink about and to start to prepare ourselves for that, because globally we will be, and we have been disrupted. And if we are still thinking about going back to some of us going back to the very same jobs that we held before, we need to start thinking twice about that. If we are thinking of the careers which we've always maybe thought of, we need to start rethinking about that, because companies have been spending a lot of time, I'm sure, scratching their heads around what is it that they need to do to actually make sure that, one, they survive, because already we know that most companies are closing down. So it's now the time to rethink, how do you survive as an organization? How do you survive as a young employee, as a young unemployed, as a young graduate, as a young student? What are some of those things that we need to start thinking of? I've been reflecting the last 2 months during the lockdown around what's going to be happening to the employment landscape. And I'm quite fortunate to be part of APSO, which is the staffing staffing organization across Africa, where we sort of understand some of the jobs that are currently impacted across the different sectors, and also sitting on the National Skills Authority, where we get to understand what's happening across the different sectors, the different skills that we require, skill scarcity, what's essential, what's no longer essential, and things are not looking great. And a lot has been exposed during the COVID-19, specifically within our country, where we found ourselves completely caught off guard. But on another level, I do think maybe it's a good thing that this has happened, because I'm personally shaken by the fact that I've been in a comfort zone thinking that everything will remain the same for a very long time. But unfortunately, the world has changed. Things are becoming a lot more uncertain. Every single day when you wake up, you're not sure what's going to be happening, what's going to be new. So let's dig deeper around the skills side of it, especially when it comes to the youth. What we've picked up in the last couple of years is that we've seen an increase in programs, learning programs, whether it's short courses or diploma degree kind of courses, which have emerged. So new careers have emerged, which then informs the new economy. And the new economy we're talking about is around the digital economy. So what do we mean by that? What we mean by that is that a lot of companies, you would have noticed already now, that they will be taking their businesses online. And the question is, do we have the skill sets in South Africa to fill up those vacancies with the skills that are most required by a lot of these companies who now need to go the e-commerce route? So previously we've been talking about social media marketing, digital marketing, and so forth. Now we're talking a lot about the e-commerce side of space. So almost every single business will be going into the e-commerce space. So now we need to start asking ourselves, if I'm in HR, if I'm in finance, if I'm in the different functions within, if I'm in operations, manufacturing, what are the skills that are going to be most needed? And that should then inform what sort of learning programs we should be pursuing, which then leads us to become employable. What we're also finding is that gone are those days where we can just be reliant on managers to tell us what courses and what career options we should be pursuing. We should now take things in our hands in terms of understanding and researching what is actually happening around us, so that we don't find ourselves caught up asleep. So as Think Career, what we've also done was to collaborate with Google, which is the Grow for Google for Africa. What they've done is to make available a whole lot of different online courses, which enables a lot of the unemployed graduates who are looking to rethink and reshape their careers, to look at different career opportunities, which will then also enable people to become employable. So we're talking about developers, we're talking about cybersecurity courses, we're talking about e-commerce market, we're talking about just understanding the whole landscape of the internet. We're not saying that your current career choices that you might have opted for are redundant. They're not redundant at all. But what we're saying is that there's an opportunity now for us to upskill ourselves even more. We cannot afford to just sit with very few skill sets because things are changing very quickly. Companies are evolving very quickly, which then requires employers to look for different skills. It will be very sad for our country and for our youth specifically, where we find that companies are starting to look for skills outside of the country. So what I would like to encourage the youth of our country on during this Youth Month is really to rethink and to relook at your career options. If you are able to do so, take up maybe assessments, personality assessments, just to check what are some of the areas which you could actually fit into. Just check out what you might be passionate about in terms of rethinking and changing some of your career options, which might no longer be relevant. And also to those who might be retrenched as we speak, this is an opportunity to actually take the time out to go and study new skills, gain new skills. And the beauty about some of these programs now is that you don't need to wait for 3 years or 2 years to gain new skills. With access, we are hoping that a lot more young people can access, opportunities to gain new skills quite quickly. So with the platform that I've mentioned, I mean, if you do visit our website, which is think-career.co.za, you'll be able to find the link where you can access these courses for free. And we will be hosting online sessions where we can actually take you through and bring and invite experts who will take you through some of the areas which you might be struggling with. But also in July, we're hoping to launch, services where, young people, even career seekers, can actually relook at some of your personal branding when it comes to career profiling. So we want to assist you as much as possible in terms of how to rebrand yourself, brand yourself from a career point of view, be it helping you pull together your CV, be it helping you to prepare for some of these new job opportunities which will become available quite soon. But also, let's use this time to upskill ourselves in some of those areas which we actually never had the opportunity to upskill ourselves in. And we do know that by the time we go to level 1, things are not going to be the same any longer. And I would encourage our youth of today to actually make use of the internet to upskill yourself, make use of the internet to build your brand, make use of the internet to become relevant when it comes to developing the skills, developing and it's not only about skills for finding jobs. We're talking about skills for even starting your own businesses. Gone are those days where you will actually need to focus on just one job. Currently, people are having side hustles, but it's no longer a side hustle. It's a way of life where you will find yourself occupying multiple jobs. And yes, one would need to understand, obviously, where there are a conflict of interest and so forth. But I would like to encourage the youth of South Africa to get on board and innovate. Get on board and do not wait for the next wave of someone to tell you, now this is what you need to do. We're now living in a globalized environment where access to information, access to the tools that we need and the resources we need to become competitive should not be blocked. And yes, just talking about the whole competitiveness part of it, with a lot of people out of work, as an employment company, we're going to find a lot more people obviously applying and competing and wanting to compete for the same job. And guess what? The best individuals with the best skills will be selected. So things are not going to get easier as we go back maybe to level one, as we know, as we hear of it. And the question is, how do we then prepare ourselves to become employable, to become resourceful, and not to heavily rely on a whole lot of different mechanisms around us, but to actually find ways to innovate and to become self-sufficient. Also, just want to mention other things that you can maybe look into is that if you're still employed as a young person or as a career person, do not also be comfortable in your current job. Continue to upskill yourself, continue to look for opportunities to grow your skills. The outlook going forward when it comes to careers is going to change significantly. So more often we talk about this is my job and this is what I'm employed to do. The world beyond is going to be looking very different. Now you need to become a lot more flexible, a lot more agile, a lot more willing to learn new skills and willing to evolve with the times. That for me is I cannot emphasize more in terms of making sure that we become a lot more flexible and agile when it comes to careers of the future. So that's basically me for now. I just want to encourage you to check out the Grow with Google digital skills programs where you can gain new skills, and a lot more will be added. And then also look out for other opportunities which we will be announcing around June, where as young people you'll be able to access free tools to build your CVs for free. You won't be charged for that. You will be able to also take up free personality assessments to check which careers to actually pursue as well. So we will be announcing some of those opportunities for the young people come June. But thank you for the opportunity, and let me introduce the next speaker, which is Mr. Miles Kubeka, who's the Accelerator Entrepreneur.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all well, good, and all of that stuff. I had an amazing presentation I was going to do for you with video and all sorts of cool stuff, but they said no. So there goes that idea. So, you know what? I'm just going to level with you. It's going to be cuck. It's already cuck. And it's probably going to get a lot more of that going forward. Now, that is what it is. And quite frankly, if you're thinking you're going to get a job, if you think you're going to stay in a job, I know I'm not a bundle of sunshine right now, right? But I think someone has to be frank with you and tell you that it's not looking pretty. I sit on a number of these calls on Zoom and Skype. I even hang out now, and you realize that no one has a cooking clue of what's going to happen. But the one thing we are all relatively certain about is that it's not going to be rosy. Okay, so knowing that, you can sit and hope for the better, but I've come to realize as an entrepreneur that hope is not a really cool strategy. In fact, hope is not a strategy. So I wouldn't put too much energy on hoping that things are going to go right. So now that we know, what do we do about it? My 2 cents on that is, I genuinely believe if you want to have a better than none existent chance going forward, is you're going to have to take it in your own hands. Waiting to be employed or those kind of things, I think that ship has relatively sailed. So it means you're essentially going to have to look at how you're going to employ yourself and hopefully others, how you're going to create a great product, how you're going to create a great business. The beautiful thing about a crisis is that it's both an opportunity uh, as well as essentially a tragedy, especially if it's one that is health bound. But it is an opportunity. It's a bloody amazing opportunity. When I said earlier that I sit in these calls and you realize that no one has a cooking clue, that means whether it's a government official or a private sector captain of industry, they all don't know. We have all the same information. We are all essentially singing from the same hymn sheet, and no one has got a clue. So that means it doesn't matter how much resources, power, money, exposure you have, we all have essentially the same data. That means you and I can essentially start a business and do things with that and take it to the next level just by virtue of that no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow. So that's an amazing, amazing opportunity. So how do you start? And that's the most sad thing I think that we've come to realize as a country, or maybe even in the world, is that no one teaches people how to start. And this is why we have the problem where people are sitting and waiting for someone to take leadership and create jobs for them. Meanwhile, they can do that themselves. And the reason for that is because we've never been taught how to create anything, how to start. I've gone to varsity, undergrad, master's level. There was no class called Start 101. Just doesn't exist. So then it surely is no surprise when we find ourselves in this position and no one knows how to start a business. So I've got a couple of recipes that I'm going to share with you on how to get going and not wait for someone. So the first recipe is start by starting. Yeah, that's actually what it takes to start. You actually have to start. I can give you amazing ideas on how to start, but ultimately it all boils down to you waking up and saying, okay, I'm going to do something about it now, not tomorrow or the day after, now. And I found that often most people, and I work with entrepreneurs, so I see it as they walk in. Most of them, in fact, generally, most people have really good ideas. It's just that they've never known how to take it to the next level. So, how do you start? I'll tell you my story, how I started. So, I saw the Vuyo TV advert. Oh, Vuyo is such a big, big dreamer. You know that ad, right? And then I trademarked it. Yeah, I just Googled how do you trademark. I went to Google, how do you trademark? And then it was a list. So I did one online. It cost me, I think, I don't know, $500 or something. And then there, I had a trademark. It took longer than I expected, sure, but I did it. So that was my first step. And I was in corporate then. I had a really good job. I'm not gonna lie. But my point here is in starting, you need to stop overthinking it. So in how do you stop overthinking something? You just literally, what do I do now to get this thing going? So that I Googled, trademarked it, then I had the Vuyo's brand essentially. But before I even had it, because it took time, because CIPC takes its own time, I went to the local Fourways Farmers Market and I essentially got a trestle table. They gave us a trestle table. Cost me, I don't know, but 600 rands a weekend. And we started selling boerewors rolls. I didn't overthink it. I literally just rocked up. I got boerewors, I got my mother's secret recipe chakalaka, and that was it. That's it. And we rock up there, they give us this wooden trestle table, right? And we just bought this grill at Game on that day. Now the problem with the grill is it's got legs, and I didn't want to put the grill behind me and cook in front of the customer. I wanted the grill to be on the table so I could see my customer. And the problem, of course, is that the grill is fire, so I can't put it on the table because the table is wood. So we remove the legs and we put one of those concrete slab things, those things you walk on, and we put it between the table and the grill, and it worked. And we started cooking, and week number 1 was a bit tough. 2 gets better. Week 3 got even better. Week number 5, we're running a queue of 20 deep. And I turn around, the guy, Peter, the guy I work with, and how I got to meet Peter, interesting story. Peter, I met him at this local restaurant I always went to. He always smiled. He always remembered my name. And I always vowed in the back of my head, I said, like, one day when I start a business, this is the guy I'm going to start it with. And that's literally how it happened. So Peter became essentially employee number 1. And I now tell my staff at the restaurants is that you never know who's going to change your life. So treat everybody like your prospective boss, because if I can't keep you and make you a better offer, why would I let you not go? So that changes your perspective on things. Anyway, so now we got this the trestle table and we're cooking. On week number 5, Peter turns around to me and says, Miles, we're on fire. I go, I know, look at the crowd. He goes, no, we're on fire. Look, what you told, you forgot to put the concrete slab between the table and the thingy, and the table had caught alight, creating big flames, and the shade netting above us was melting, creating like a big extraction, and essentially it was lit, as the young people say. And now we're like, what do? You know, one of the first things I discovered as an entrepreneur is Jesus. Because with the life of me, I can't tell you why we didn't burn down that market. All the evidence was that Vuyo burns down for his farmers market because we had no fire extinguisher, the floor was made out of wood chips, the table was wood, and the fire was bellowing. But we did it. But the important lesson learned there is that if you're going to do something worthwhile, if you want to make an omelet, you're going to have to crack an egg. So as much as I can spend 20 minutes telling you on how to start something, the fact is you're going to have to start. And the best place to start is, no matter how big your vision or your goal is, and I mean, I'm Vuyo, I'm the big dreamer. We started at Fourways Farmers Market over a weekend, selling wors. I mean, it doesn't get any more humble than that. Imagine me telling my mother that I'm leaving Microsoft, the multinational, that I was traveling the world to go sell Borovos rolls. That conversation wasn't, she was like, oh, Tanang, what about the medical aid, the insurance? She really doesn't sound like that, but you get the point, right? And I realized, number 2, lesson I learned there, is that most of the time people don't start anything because they have a fear. But often than not, it's not even their own fear. It's their parents' or spouse's fear. It's everybody else's fear. That I can't help you with, bro. You're going to have to, either start small, which makes your fear a little bit less overwhelming, but essentially you're going to have to start. Cool. The power of PR. A lot of people believe in social media. I see young guys saying, oh, I'm going to put things on social media. Social media, I mean, it's got its legs. I believe that. But I do think PR compared to social media is much better. When I started, when we moved from the Fourways Farmers Market and we grew our business, we found a site in Braamfontein, and I got 4 snow machines and we made it snow. It was amazing on Christmas Eve, no, day after Christmas, Boxing Day. And it was snowing. People were eating poikis and it was amazing. And it was like, overcast and snowing. And the next day, I'm sitting there, not a single customer in the store. The day before, it was full. Next day, no one. I'm sitting there, my tables are lily white like corporate South Africa. I'm thinking, how did I get here? Then I started writing an article I called the Sunday Times actually. I said, listen, would you be interested in hearing about how we made it snow in the middle of an African summer? They went, meh, and I hung up. But I still have nothing else to do. So I started writing about how this day was and how beautiful it was and how the food was great and everything. And I put the journalist byline, I attached a picture, PDF, and I typefaced it, and I emailed it to him. And he called me about 20 minutes later. He asked me 1 or 2 questions. At this point, I'm thinking, well, we may make it to page 189 on the Sunday Times, it's a thin one in December. And on that Sunday, I got called by Robbie Brosen, the founder of Nando's. We were on the front page of the Sunday Times. And a lesson I learned there is that often journalists write negative stories because you don't have to look far for negative stories. They come to you. Positive stories, not so much. They're far and harder to find, but they are there. So by me writing the story, I just made this guy's job easy. And before I knew it, I was in a media cycle because the other journalists are equally lazy and they were started all the way writing, they were sharing the same story. And so I inherited amazing public relations or PR for nothing. And never mind the fact that that ad that I based Vuyo's on, SAP had spent 50 million rands on it. So essentially what I'm saying to you, I started a business from day one. Essentially, it had over 50 million rands of brand equity. I did nothing except to recognize that this is a great ad, it's a great brand, and I'm going to make something out of it. And I went and sold Borovos rolls and left my job to go do it. Big risk, sure. Would I recommend it? To each their own. You know your life circumstance better than I do. But essentially, it's all on you. I think I've got 2 more minutes. How much more? 5, 2? I can shut up and move on. I can introduce the next guest. Okay, maybe I'll do one more recipe. I'll do recipe number 4. Highly recommended. In fact, I'll do 2. Recipe 4 and 5. 5 is about doing good is good business. I'm going to leave you with that. Please remind me. I mustn't forget that one. But recipe number 4, minimum viable product. Don't wait until you have a great product to start a business. I see this day in, day out. People saying, "Oh, I've got," and you can see them that they go to bed with this idea and they think having the idea is the business. No, giving birth to it is the business. Having an idea just means you're half pregnant, right? So the idea of minimum viable product is whatever it is, see if someone can pay for it. That's the fundamental basis of a business. Would someone exchange money for your idea? And typically, no one will exchange money for an idea. So you're going to have to make version 1 of whatever your idea is. And it doesn't have to be pretty. I mean, if I showed you our first Boerewors roll to what the final one, in fact, our first one was 23 Rand. Our final one was 110 Rands. Yeah, who knew? But the point is, we started with version 1. As bad as it was, we improved, and then we improved. And the best part is, with minimum viable product, you use your customers' money to improve on it. So we'd get to the market, we'd put all 3 Boerewors rolls, and the one that didn't sell that day, we take the money from the 2 that sold to improve the 3rd one. And we did that, and we did that, and we did that until you have a great product. But the first one, dodge, scary stuff. Final one, amazing. But we didn't wait. So recipe number 5, doing good is good business. So when COVID started 2.5 months ago, I sat there and I realized when the lockdown happened that we're going to have a problem. I mean, I grew up in Soweto. I know Alex, Deep Sloot. There's no food there. So if you're shutting down in there was a Makota, where people, or spaza shops, where people going to get food? To me, that was a no-brainer. It was obvious that we're going to have a big challenge. So instead of sitting at home like everybody else, yes, you, I decided to get in my car and I went to check out. I mean, maybe it's an entrepreneurial spirit. When people say do this, maybe I want to see what's this side. Then I'll do that, right? And that's what we did. And I discovered that in Truth Valley, spaza shops, everything was closed. There was no food in most townships. So where people going to eat? And bear in mind that most of these people weren't. It's not poverty we were solving for. These people were working. It's the guy who fixes shoes, the guy who paints, whatever. Guys who have piece jobs every day now can't buy food anywhere. So it was like, how do we solve for that? So I went back to my accelerator, I told our entrepreneurs, we all rolled up our sleeves and we started making food, essentially for free. We started with 200 meals a day. We didn't have the money. I'm not going to lie. I mean, everybody's under lockdown. That means we're not making money. The entrepreneurs are not making money. But we decided we've got some food in the fridge. So let's just go give the food away to kids. So we applied for essential services license and we became essentially essential services, and we started going to provide food. We started with 200 meals a day. End of last month, we did 65,000 meals. Let me tell you a secret. We started with 200. Yeah, sure, it cost us a little bit. Even that was not much. But the beautiful part is when people realize what we're doing, we're so surprised to see how many people jumped on. All of a sudden, we had other corporates and partners and sponsors, and we got up to 65,000 meals. So if you're sitting there at home thinking you don't know how to be part of what's going to happen going forward, dude, all you have right now is your time. If it means volunteering that or giving that time, that is an investment in potentially something big. So with that, I'm going to leave it. If there's any questions, no questions. Oh, awesome. It's really, was I that bad? All right. Our next guest is Lalani van Jans Ransberg. I'm right. Okay. And she'll be, I don't have my, can I do a proper intro? Apologies. Thank you. Our next guest is Ms. Lalani Janse van Rensburg, Executive Manager, Regional Operations for Productivity SA. She'll be talking to us about Itukisa Internship and Employment Graduates Program. Cool, sweet.
Good morning to everyone. As I was introduced, thank you so much, Miles. My name is Lelani Janssen van Rensburg. I'm the Regional Executive Productivity SA. For those of you who know what productivity is, great stuff, but I'm going to work on the premise that let's make productivity funky. Productivity is using less and doing more. Now, Productivity SA is funded by the Department of Employment and Labour, and it's got a mandate where it needs to improve productivity in order to grow businesses in South Africa. Now, we're all hearing bad news and jobs are lost, and it's a terrible thing at this point. But the beautiful thing about an entity like Productivity SA is all our solutions that we bring in improves your ultimate productivity so that jobs can be saved. It is obviously the objective at the end of the day, and what we can save, we do save. So a bit about productivity and then about the Itukise project of Productivity SA. Productivity SA has various programs, one of which is called the Workplace Challenge Program. Now, the Workplace Challenge Program, for someone sitting at home, you could think, what is it? It's as its name says, it is a challenge for you to improve your business and ultimately to become a best practice site. So this program is funded by the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. Then we have various other smaller programs that are all Kaizen related. Now, Kaizen is a solution that you bring in so that ultimately you improve your quality, your cost, your speed, everything in your business. So I could sit here and promote a lot of different programs, but I'm not going to. Ultimately, I just want to tell you about one specific one that I think is applicable to you at home and that you might want to do some research on. Now, firstly, I'm going to give you our website's details. It's www.productivitysA.co.za. Now, there you can go into all the different programs that we have, and you can see how you can benefit. But ultimately, the one of choice that I'm talking about today is called Itukise. Now, Itukise means to prepare yourself. Now, Productivity SA is the implementation body for Itukise, which is funded by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And what we do is we place graduates in different host entities, and then we measure their productivity. We train them as champions, and ultimately the objective is for them to become productive citizens, productive employees. Now, how could you participate in something like this? There's different things that you could do. If you are an entrepreneur and you have office space and you have the ability to coach another entrepreneur, I mean, we listened to Miles Quebeca a couple of minutes ago. He's a brilliant entrepreneur. If you've got that kind of brilliance, share it. Host. So then indicate to Productivity SA, complete the form on our website, and then host a couple of graduates. If not, and you're a graduate and you want a bit of work readiness from a productivity perspective, because if you can measure it, you can improve on it, and that's the kind of productivity ambassadors we want to unleash into the market. It's a difficult thing to be productive, but if someone shows you and you completely recalibrate your mind to become a productive person, it's very easy to coach on productivity. So ultimately, you could either become a host where Productivity SA then places graduates for you at your place of employment. And obviously, there are terms and conditions. We need to look at your premises. You have to have a physical premises, and you must have the ability to give them work readiness, and we track that. The second thing you can do, if you're not a host employee, you can apply for the program. And you send your CV to Itukise, ITUKISE at productivitysA.co.za, or you can just go to our website and complete the form there. I have to say space is limited, so please speak now or forever hold your peace when it comes to this. But these opportunities are there. And if you do not get into the program, then look at our other solutions that Productivity SA has. We are partners with the CCMA. We have partnerships with like-minded entities like CEDA and CIFA. All of us are working in an integrated ecosystem to ultimately improve productivity in South Africa. But it starts with you. So let's think about something that you could do for now. Whilst you are doing research on all these beautiful programs and watching webinars, What are you doing with your time? What are your children doing with their time? Do you keep to a schedule? If, let's say, for instance, you're not going to the office at this point, do you still wake up in the mornings at a certain time? When you wake up, what do you do with your time? What example are you for your children and for others sharing your home so that they can see that you're productive? Because productivity is something that if you see it, you can replicate it. But if someone else is not productive around you, it also has it can influence you negatively. So start with your children, be a productive parent, look at these programs and utilize your time effectively. If you spend your time on social media, make it productive time. Make sure that you do research on things, make sure that you make use of opportunities, see what the government has in store for you, what you can apply for, and don't give up. So I think ultimately all I want to say today is, as an ambassador of productivity and an employee of Productivity SA, we do have programs available, but you have to take the time and go see how can you benefit from it. Because if not now, when? Thank you so much. I don't know if I have any questions. Lovely. Then I would like to invite Ms. Sinzizwa Zimandla, the Manager, Councils and Agency CCMA, to just do the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. I'm sure as the youth, we got a lot of knowledge and assistance imparted on us today through the various speakers that were giving discussions and imputing their knowledge to us today. Mr. Mpumelelo Ngcono took us through the processes at the CCMA that would assist youth and employees in the labor market in terms of retrenchments, also learnerships and internships that the youth is involved in, what to look out for as an intern and as an individual involved in a learnership. Also, the issue of retrenchments, as we know, a lot of companies are retrenching currently. What is it that you as an individual needs to know? What are your rights and where do you get the assistance? Thank you so much for that, Mr. Ngcono. Ms. Kanyim Shongo challenged us as the youth to embrace the new normal. As we know, we are in the digital age, e-commerce space. So as the youth, we need to start thinking of ways to upskill ourselves so that we meet the demand. Then Mr. Miles Kubeka, the entrepreneur, also challenged us as the youth to look at ways in which we can employ ourselves and others. And this will surely increase job creation in our country. It will assist with economic growth and development in our country if we as the youth start thinking outside of the box and create jobs. Then we had Ms. Lilana Janssen van Reinsberg, the executive manager from Productivity SA, who shared with us the various opportunities in terms of various platforms that are available for us as the youth to utilize in job creation, finding jobs, in growing ourselves and upskilling ourselves as well. So on behalf of the CCMA, I would like to thank all the panel members of today for their diligent preparation and the deliverance of their topics today. I would also like to make a special mention of Mr. Dominique Gaupepe. I hope I'm not pronouncing the surname incorrectly. I apologize for that, who was our narrator and voiceover for today. Thank you so much, Mr. Gaupepe. I would also wish to further thank the youth of South Africa for joining us today in our discussions and for actively participating in today's discussions. I hope that today's discussions were of benefit to you and that you will surely play an active role in ensuring and promoting socio-economic growth in our country. Thank you so much from our side as the CCMA. We wish you a further good day as you go and do your own things. Thank you.